12 years after the brutal murder of 53-year-old Eliza Sherman, a Cleveland Clinic nurse and mother of 4, the man believed to be responsible was finally indicted. Eliza was known for her humor, kindness, and deep care for those around her. Her personal life, however, was marked by turmoil. After nearly 3 decades of marriage to Dr. Sanford Sherman, she filed for divorce in 2011. Police had been called to their home 22 times between 2000 and 2013 due to repeated incidents, including allegations of domestic abuse, infidelity, and financial misconduct. On March 24, 2013, just 2 days before the divorce trial was scheduled to begin, Eliza was called to meet her attorney, Gregory Moore, at his office in downtown Cleveland. When she arrived, the building was locked. She waited outside for about an hour before deciding to return to her car. As she walked toward the parking area on East 12th Street, an unknown individual approached her, circled behind her, and fatally stabbed her 11 times, once in the arm, twice in the neck, and 8 times in the back. Her screams were heard by an employee from a nearby building, who rushed outside and found her critically wounded on the sidewalk. She was taken to Metro Health Medical Center, where she was pronounced dead at 6:14 p.m. despite public outcry and a reward fund established by her family. No arrests were made at the time. Her husband Sanford refused to cooperate with authorities and moved to Florida. Meanwhile, suspicions grew around her attorney, Gregory Moore. In December 2013, Moore was indicted for making bomb threats to delay court proceedings in 2012. In 2016, he was charged with obstruction and falsification after he lied to investigators about his location during the time of Eliza's murder. He pled guilty in 2017 and was sentenced to 180 days in jail, 3 years of community control, and 150 hours of service. His law license was suspended, and he resigned the following year. In 2021, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation took over the case. The turning point came in May 2025 when Moore, now 51, was arrested in Texas by U.S. Marshals. A Cuyahoga County grand jury indicted him on charges of aggravated murder, 6 counts of murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and conspiracy. Moore pleaded not guilty. His bond was set at $2 million, and the court ordered him to have no contact with Eliza's family and to submit a DNA sample. According to prosecutors, Moore orchestrated the murder to delay Eliza's divorce trial because he was unprepared. At the time, he was overwhelmed with cases after his partners at Stafford Law Co. lost their licenses. Despite billing Eliza over $100,000, Moore had fallen behind. The indictment alleges that he used a mobile Wi-Fi hotspot law firm to contact Eliza without using his personal phone, avoiding location tracking. He lured her to a locked office, knowing she would be isolated. Investigators later discovered that 21 minutes of surveillance footage from the building likely to have captured the attack had been deleted. A voicemail Eliza left at the law office shortly before her death was also erased. Moore accessed the office later that evening and sent a message to Eliza, even though she was already dead, apparently trying to mislead investigators. Prosecutors believe others helped him destroy electronic evidence. Eliza's estranged husband died in July 2023 at the age of 68, never having been charged. Authorities now say Moore planned the attack, manipulated records, and concealed evidence for over a decade. After years of silence, lies, and pain, justice for Eliza Sherman may finally be within reach. 12 years after the brutal slaying of Eliza Sherman, authorities made a major breakthrough in a case that had long haunted her family and community. Although her husband, Dr. Sanford Sherman, had a troubled relationship with Eliza, he was never named as a suspect or considered a co-conspirator in her murder. Eliza, a mother of 4, was remembered not only as a dedicated Cleveland Clinic nurse but as a beloved fertility expert who helped countless families. Each year, rallies and candlelight vigils were held in her honor on the anniversary of her death. Her daughter, Jennifer Sherman, publicly thanked investigators for their perseverance and commitment. In 2023, Jennifer established the Eliza Sherman Fund, an initiative aimed at supporting Cleveland Clinic patients and caregivers who have experienced violence. The fund also works to promote violence prevention and awareness through targeted programming and community engagement. Eliza's brother, Harry Shin, expressed the complex emotions the family felt upon the indictment of Gregory Moore. "I am in shock because after 12 years, you do not expect it," he said. "The best word to sum up my feelings at this point would be bittersweet. Glad they got the person, but the memories are painful," Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Michael O'Malley stated. The Sherman family has waited over a decade for answers regarding their mother's case. Through the tenacious work of multiple law enforcement agencies, evidence was accumulated that paints the unmistakable picture that Gregory Moore orchestrated and participated in the brutal slaying of Eliza Sherman. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost, whose Bureau of Criminal Investigation took over the case in 2021, credited new forensic tools and fresh investigative perspectives for finally breaking the case. Although he declined to release too many specifics ahead of a possible trial, he noted that communications between Moore and Eliza were central to the renewed investigation. On July 3, 2025, Moore posted a $2 million bond. Just days later, on July 7, Cuyahoga County prosecutors filed an emergency motion requesting GPS monitoring. Judge Kathleen Sutula granted the motion and imposed strict bond conditions. Moore was forbidden from owning firearms or holding a passport, and he was not allowed to leave the state or country. Additionally, he was restricted from accessing certain areas in order to protect the Sherman family's safety. Violating any of these terms would result in immediate arrest without bond. Moore's trial is currently scheduled to begin on March 30, 2026. In another case that took over 2 decades to solve, investigators unraveled a chilling plot involving love, betrayal, and murder. David Vanderzee, a 47-year-old Navy veteran from Randall, Wisconsin, was found dead in his home on September 23, 2003, just 8 weeks after marrying Roxana Vanderzee. He had been shot 5 times in the back of the head, execution style. Police suspected from the start that David knew his killer. There were no signs of forced entry or a struggle, suggesting he had let the person in. On the night of the murder, Roxana told police she finished work at 5:45 p.m., went shopping in Gurnee, and returned home around 8 p.m., where she discovered David's body. At the time of David's death, Roxana was allegedly having an affair with John Viscosil, one of David's close friends. In a suspicious turn of events, Roxana reportedly moved in with John just weeks after David's murder. During the initial investigation in 2003, John told police that he had visited David around 2 p.m. on the day of the murder, but claimed he went home, covered his boat, and went fishing afterward. Now, more than 20 years later, new evidence and persistent investigative efforts have brought this cold case back to life. Authorities believe the motive was to remove David so that Roxana and John could be together. The case stands as another powerful reminder that even after decades, justice can still be served. David Vanderzee's case appeared to have gone cold for good until a crucial statement changed everything more than 2 decades later. On September 23, 2003, just 8 weeks after his wedding, 47-year-old Navy veteran David Vanderzee was found shot dead in his Pea Lake home in Randall, Wisconsin. He had been executed with 5 gunshot wounds to the back of his head. There was no sign of forced entry or a struggle, leading investigators to believe David knew his killer. His wife, Roxana Vanderzee, told police she left work at 5:45 p.m. and went shopping in Gurnee, returning around 8 p.m. to find her husband's body. At the time, she was reportedly in a relationship with John Viscosil, one of David's close friends. Not long after David's murder, Roxana moved in with John. During the initial investigation, John told police he had visited David at 2 p.m. the day of the murder, then went home and fished alone on Pea Lake from 6 o'clock to 8 p.m. When authorities searched his home, they discovered several .38 caliber revolvers and boxes of matching ammunition, although the murder weapon was never recovered. Ballistic experts confirmed that bullet fragments from the scene were consistent with firearms previously owned by John. Still, there wasn't enough evidence in 2003 to arrest either Roxana or John, and the case went cold. In 2025, the case was reopened after a former girlfriend of John's came forward. She cast doubt on his original alibi, calling it suspicious and out of character. She said that when John returned home from his alleged fishing trip, he immediately put his clothes in the washing machine. John had explained to police that he'd fallen into the lake, but the girlfriend told investigators she didn't remember him being wet, nor any mention of a mess at the time. Kenosha County District Attorney Xavier Solis prioritized reopening the case. On May 28, 2025, 2 decades after the murder, 70-year-old Roxana Collins of McHenry, Illinois, was arrested on charges of first-degree intentional homicide as a party to a crime and use of a dangerous weapon. She was held at McHenry County Jail on a $75,000 cash bond pending extradition to Wisconsin. That same day, 70-year-old John J. Viscosil of Genoa City was also arrested on identical charges and was held at Kenosha County Jail with a $500,000 cash bond. Authorities credited the arrests to persistent detective work. Court records later showed Roxana posted bail and was released from jail at 6:49 p.m. on June 3. If convicted, both face life in prison. Authorities urge anyone with additional information to contact the Kenosha County Sheriff's Office Detective Bureau at 262-605-5102. In another long unsolved case, police in Massachusetts finally uncovered the truth behind the 1980 slaying of 48-year-old Katharina Wright's bro after an innocent man had already spent nearly 2 decades behind bars. The breakthrough came through genetic testing, which identified the real perpetrator. Katharina was found brutally murdered in her trailer home in Ayer, Massachusetts, on May 21, 1980. Her husband had left for work at around 7:10 a.m., and by 10:45 a.m. she was discovered deceased. She had been struck repeatedly with a blunt object and stabbed 30 times, 5 of the wounds piercing her heart. The scene showed signs of a violent struggle, and several valuable items were missing, including jewelry, her purse, and a large amount of cash she kept hidden in a linen closet. Investigators recovered blood, fingerprints, and hairs they believed belonged to the killer. The murder weapon, a knife, was found discarded in a wastebasket. Kenneth Waters, who lived next door with his girlfriend Brenda Marsh, became a suspect. He was a chef at the Park Street Diner, a place Katharina frequently visited. Employees there were aware that she kept significant amounts of cash at home. Kenneth was questioned and provided a solid alibi. He said he worked until 8:30 a.m. and was driven home by a co-worker. He then changed clothes and went to a 9 a.m. court appearance with his attorney. Staying until after 11 a.m., he returned to the diner and remained there until 12:30 p.m. Police found no injuries or blood on him and did not arrest him at the time. The case remained open for more than 2 years until October 1982, when a new twist emerged. Brenda, Kenneth's ex-girlfriend by then, had begun dating a man named Robert Osborne. Robert approached the AO police and what followed changed Kenneth Waters' life forever. The wrongful conviction of Kenneth Waters for a 1980 murder shocked the nation, and his eventual exoneration became a powerful story of determination, family loyalty, and the critical role of forensic science in achieving justice. In October 1982, 2 years after 48-year-old Katharina Wrightsbrough was found stabbed and bludgeoned to death in her trailer home in AOR, Massachusetts, a man named Robert Osborne approached the AOR Police Department. He offered to provide information on the case in exchange for money. Osborne claimed that his girlfriend, Brenda Marsh, Kenneth Waters, extolled him that Kenneth had confessed to killing a woman. Investigators brought Brenda in for questioning. According to reports, officers threatened her with being charged as an accessory to murder and warned that her children could be taken from her. Although she initially denied Osborne's claims, she eventually changed her statement. Brenda then told police that Kenneth had returned home on the morning of May 21, 1980, with a deep scratch on his face. Another former girlfriend, Rosanna Perry, had also initially denied knowing anything about the crime, but after more than 3 hours of intense interrogation and threats of arrest, she told investigators that Kenneth had once mentioned stabbing a woman and stealing money and jewelry, despite the fact that none of the physical evidence at the crime scene connected Kenneth to the murder. He was arrested and charged based solely on these coerced statements. At his 1983 trial, a forensic analyst testified that none of the 3 hairs collected at the crime scene, including one found in Katharina's hand, and another on the knife, matched either the victim or Kenneth. Nevertheless, on May 11, 1983, Kenneth was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. He spent the next 16 years filing appeals, all of which were denied after Rosanna Perry recanted her testimony. But Kenneth had a powerful advocate, his sister Betty Ann Waters, determined to clear his name. She put herself through college and then law school with one goal: to prove her brother's innocence. In 1999, Betty Ann located the crime scene evidence and secured a court order to preserve it for DNA testing. She teamed up with the Innocence Project, and together they convinced the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office to allow testing by a private lab. In 2000, DNA results conclusively excluded Kenneth as the source of the blood at the crime scene. His conviction was vacated shortly after. A reinvestigation by state police uncovered incomplete and previously undisclosed case records. For the first time, police turned over full documentation, including a report confirming Kenneth's work schedule and detailed fingerprint evidence collected before trial. These findings further supported Kenneth's innocence. On March 15, 2001, all charges against Kenneth Waters were dropped. After spending nearly 18 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit, Kenneth was officially exonerated. Tragically, he was only able to enjoy his freedom for 6 months. On September 19, 2001, Kenneth died in an accidental fall. He was just 47 years old. Reflecting on his brief time as a free man, Betty Ann said, "Kenny had the best 6 months of his life. After so many years behind bars, the world was new to him." More than 2 decades later, in 2022, the Middlesex County District Attorney's Cold Case Unit revisited the case using advanced forensic investigative genetic genealogy. Working with forensic chemists, they finally identified the man whose blood had been left at the crime scene, proving not only Kenneth's innocence but also bringing long overdue answers in a case marked by injustice. Thanks to decades of persistent detective work and advances in forensic science, 4 chilling cold cases have finally seen major breakthroughs, bringing long-awaited justice, or at least long-overdue answers. In the case of Katharina Wrightsbrough slain in her Ayer, Massachusetts trailer home on May 21, 1980, the mystery of her brutal death was finally solved 45 years later. With the help of Parabon nanolabs and forensic genetic genealogy, investigators traced a DNA profile recovered from the crime scene to a specific genetic line. This led them to 2 deceased brothers as possible suspects. Investigators then located 2 living relatives who cooperated with the investigation, allowing scientists to narrow the search to one man, Joseph Leo Boudreau. Boudreau was 37 years old at the time of the murder and had a criminal past, including a 1975 armed robbery conviction in New Hampshire. He lived in Massachusetts and later moved to Maine, where he died on June 15, 2004, at the age of 61. Though he can no longer face prosecution, his identification brings long-awaited clarity. Middlesex District Attorney Marion Ryan said, "No, what matter how much time passes, our priority remains the same: to seek answers. Today, we are able to name her perpetrator and provide overdue clarity to her family." Ayer Police Chief Brian Gill added, "The breakthrough came from the application of forensic investigative genetic genealogy to the evidence recovered at the scene. I'm hopeful this brings closure and a measure of justice for Katerina." Meanwhile, in a separate case across the world, a double homicide that occurred in 1992 in Sichuan Province, China, was finally resolved after more than 3 decades. On July 22nd of that year, a mother and her 17-year-old daughter were fatally stabbed with a kitchen knife in their home in Waiwan County. The daughter's boyfriend and the woman's son Li, then 29, fled the country shortly after the crime. With limited technology and communication infrastructure at the time, Chinese authorities were unable to locate him, and the case went cold. In 2024, investigators reopened the case and made a disturbing discovery. They learned that 2 months after Li disappeared, his elder brother's wife, surnamed Zhu, had also vanished under mysterious circumstances. The brother never filed a missing persons report, as the marriage had been rocky. Rumors swirled that Zhu had been romantically involved with Li prior to her disappearance. Drawing the attention of authorities, investigators found that Zhu had visited relatives in 2013 and had a son and daughter, but her exact whereabouts were unknown. Using an Oldsmobile number, officers traced her to Jiangmen in Guangdong Province. A surveillance image captured a woman on a pedicab resembling Zhu Yu, following the lead. Police arrived at a small hamlet in suburban Jiangmen where locals confirmed that the couple in the photo, speaking with Sichuan accents, had lived there for about 30 years, raising 2 children. The man was believed to be Li. An undercover officer posing as a customer at a construction site where Li worked managed to retrieve a discarded cigarette butt. DNA testing confirmed his identity in September 2024. After 32 years on the run, Li was arrested. In 2025, Li confessed to the double homicide. He claimed that his then-girlfriend, the 17-year-old girl, had demanded a large sum of money from his mother and threatened to end the relationship if the demand wasn't met. During a confrontation, Li said he stabbed his girlfriend.